Thick smoke hangs over the heart of Britain as a choking dawn reveals the terrors of the night. London has been wounded during the hours of darkness, but what colossal strength runs in her veins? As hoses still play on the smouldering ruins, a fireman is heard to say, "Blimey, he wasn't half cross with us last night."
Over to Finsbury for a last look at houses no one will miss when the planners of a new London give the order, pull 'em down. The ravages of time and the shake-up of the Blitz left many parts of the city looking like this. What they needed in districts like these were big new blocks of flats, clean buildings to house the overcrowded families of the city. And that was how the planners came to try out a bold experiment, Skyscraper Flats. It's a small world we live in, but at a West London studio which specialises in making scale models, you really feel like Gulliver in Lilliput. Trees are made of sponge rubber in this model of the Harlow housing scheme.
This, believe it or not, is the Elephant and Castle. And let me tell you that if you find it quite unrecognisable, so do a lot of its oldest inhabitants nowadays. The London County Council has got one of its biggest redevelopment schemes underway here. The old public house that used to be on this corner, called the Elephant and Castle, has been pulled down, along with nearly everything else in the neighbourhood. And instead, up go the shiny steel and glass boxes to add to the chaos of London's modern skyline.
This is how the councillors, planners, architects, civil engineers had begun to see Thamesmead, a town of the 21st century. Stage one was to include a 30-acre lake, housing for about 5,000 people, its own local health centre and schools, recreation and play areas. By 1969, plan and model started to become reality.
Now, we're here on the 15th floor. How many children do you have?
2.
And how old are they?
Well, the girl's 8, the boy's 7.
And what's it like bringing children up right up
It's
here?
terrible. There's nowhere for them to play. You can't always take them downstairs, so most of the time they're shut up.
I mean, what goes through your mind at night when you look out?
Well, you just don't look out the window, do you? It's get depressing to keep looking out there. Just ignore it.
In which case, Mr. Drew, how does one go about attracting large developers and private capital into a big scheme like Docklands?
Well, I think that we have to look at an entirely new program of legislation. We have to do something about the penal rating system that exists at the present moment. We have to make it possible for developers and attractive to developers to build private housing for rent. And we have to streamline the incredible bureaucratic machinery that appears at the present moment to inhibit the process of development.
As a personal view, how long do you think it's going to be before Docklands is fully developed?
Well, I don't know. How old is your son? He might see it before he dies.
This is your back garden, Bob. You ought to be ashamed of yourself.
Yeah, look at it. Right blight. Do you know there's more derelict land now than there was at the height of the Blitz.
Really? What, along this part of London?
Absolutely, yeah. The report on Hayes Wolf,
Yeah.
they said that riverside sort of land was totally inappropriate or unfit for family housing.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
Well, you see that, there's a tower there, there's a city there. You know, it's far too important for ordinary people. You know, it's sterilised by greed, that's what the Thames is.
And right across there, of course, you've got Wapping, haven't you?
Now that's another story. All along there, they've got a load of warehouses right on the river. They've got workshops and light industry in there. And they're all getting turfed out because they're going to turn those warehouses into luxury flats, right? Then they're going to run a road right the way through the middle of it, like separating sort of the water people, the rich Wapping who live by the river, and the poor Wapping who live on the other side of the road. It's called regenerating the river, you know. So bringing it back to life, sort of making it a playground for the wealthy.
Well, yeah, I suppose the wealthy can afford the nice sites on the river. I mean, you know, they can pay for it. But what about the things like the Coin Street development and the people who are going to live there? Who's going to pay for that?
Look, Barry, Coin Street and all those things are a typical example of what is going on at the moment. We spend billions every year on making missiles that are so powerful that they're redundant before they're made because our only hope is to sort of not use them.
Yeah.
Well, why can't we spend some of that money, just some of that money, on making this a nice place to live for everybody? And if there was a nice place to live, maybe there wouldn't be this morbid industry sort of interest in blowing it up all the time.
In the end, they reckoned that £200 of gelignite would be just enough to bring it all down safely, and the final connections were made. The honour of pressing the button fell to representatives of the disgruntled tenants, young and old. The bottom floors concertinaed as planned, but even as the building was disappearing into the dust, it was apparent that the demolition had not gone entirely as planned. As the grey clouds engulfed onlookers, the official party took shelter from the fallout. And when the dust eventually cleared, the problem was revealed. The top half of the building perched at a worrying angle on a pile of concrete rubble. It was all rather embarrassing, but no one had expected the much criticised tower block to be quite so resilient.
The simple story is the structure was stronger than anyone thought when they were working out how much explosives to put in there. The rest of the structure will be demolished according to plan in the very near future.
Once this site was used for ordnance tests by the Woolwich Arsenal. That's long gone, but the issues here are still potentially explosive. Begun in 1967 by the GLC, Thamesmead was to be a new town of 40,000 people, complete with its own facilities and finished by 1982. 17 years later, it's still only half complete. 20,000 people live here, but many roads and social amenities are behind target. Now the original grand plan faces further disintegration because of GLC abolition.
We're going to take on a huge and complex service with less money, and yet we need to maintain that service in the interests of the people in the borough.
Compulsory competitive tendering means putting all our basic services to public tender within the next 3 years. This will result in substantial job losses within these services and will have a major knock-on effect in all the support services. It will affect all departments of the council.
The new housing legislation requires the housing department to improve and at the same time to be self-financing.
The council's been rate capped next year for the 5th year running. This will not only mean higher rents, it will also mean less money to be spent on services. The following year, poll tax will be introduced. Not only will this cost 3 times as much to collect as rates, it will also mean higher charges for the residents of Southwark.
In the early 1990s, Southwark Council began to kind of rethink itself and rethink Southwark's place in London. And we stopped being a South London borough with our back to the river, and we started to think of ourselves as a Central London borough. Respectable, we came up in old, we're a Central London borough. We faced and embraced the river, and actually we wanted a slice of that Central London action. We had been poor, we had been miserable, we didn't want to go on being poor and miserable for another 200 years. Southwark has always been one of the poorer areas of London, and the figures are truly scary. Right here, right in the heart of London, literally just across the river from the City of London, we have areas where children's life expectancy is 10, 17 years less than you would be if you were born on the other side of the river. And we don't want to go on mopping up with the consequences of social failure. We want our people to be bright, active, economically active citizens who have the opportunity to take the best of everything that London has to offer. And that requires a radical rethink about Southwark as a place and what we want to attract to Southwark, which is why our next big project is the Elephant and Castle, the fabulously well-connected part of London. And in fact, the Elephant and Castle should...
Yes, Alice, London's skyline this evening lit up, dominated by high-rise buildings, and lots of those red dots over there, well, they're cranes, and that, broadly speaking, is good news. When the builders are busy, everyone else is too. But a note of caution, all this high-end office space being constructed isn't necessarily easing the pressure on small businesses. City analysts often look to the skies for a sense of which way the economic winds are blowing. Right now, appetite for construction in the city is stronger than ever. The London Office Trade Survey is a sort of barometer for London's economy. This latest report shows that in the past 6 months, 31 construction projects have got underway. That means currently 9.5 million square foot of office space is in the pipeline. That's up 24% since November.
項目最大嘅亮點之一就係緊挨太原市米德嘅中心 Thamesmead 湖。作為高端湖景住宅，項目提供1居室、2居室、3居室可選，每套房都可以享受到私人戶外空間。喺未來，業主喺社區裏邊可以享受嘅配套仲有 Skyscraper 超市、圖書館、醫療點、青年社區中心、餐廳。
Quoting an American newspaper, the indiscriminate orgy of destruction is not the weapon to defeat England. From the dust of London arises only new life and hotter defiance. Hardened and angry, Britain fights back. We've got an adapted slogan now. Can we take it? Sure we can take it, right back where it came from.